Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Name the dog in the animal.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints?
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is my gum-chewing stride friend, Frank. How are you today,
I'm
sir?
good, buddy. How are you?
Good. I'm good.
That's a deep pull.
That's not the reference you thought I was going to
Nope,
go with.
it is not.
Was it? Yeah.
It is not.
Yeah, I know. What are you drinking today?
I am drinking a Sam Adams Scotch Ale.
Oh, because I've been drinking it the past couple of times. You really...
I came over to the Scotch side.
Oh, well, I came over to
Scotch.
I came over to the escape route side.
You did.
We had all the beer.
All the beer.
Yeah, so it's good. I'm glad we got the trade. But,
yeah,
you know,
we have
a couple of weeks have been very unoriginal.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. When we find something good, we stick to it for a while. We have right now. I have a Sam Adams 12-pack, the Cabin Pack, in my fridge, and it's a bunch of wintry beers, including their Cold Snap, their Boston Lager, the Escape Route, the Scotch Ale. So yeah, some good wintry selections, and we've been enjoying that
On this brisk day.
Yes,
Indeed. All right, so here's the thing.
Somebody save you.
Somebody save me.
Yeah.
That theme song is going to be in my head the rest of the night. But
You're welcome.
Thanks. Smallville did have one of the best theme songs.
Absolutely.
I will say that it's so 90s in its like little way. Like you'd almost expect it to be like somebody save me, and then it's like starring Tom Welling.
Yeah, right.
And smile at camera.
I mean that is basically
basically
what it was. Yeah. I mean it started in 2001, right?
Yep.
So like it was very late 90s, early 2000s.
Yep. Started my freshman year of high school.
Okay, so you were exactly the right age.
I was their target market.
You were Clark's age the whole time,
basically. But I remember watching the pilot episode, going, "That dude is definitely not 14." Like, what age is he supposed to be? Because he's definitely not in my class,
right.
But he definitely was supposed to.
And
be.
he was literally 23, 24.
Yeah. Oh my god. But it's funny because if you watch season 10 and go back and watch season 1, you're like, "You look like that's a baby."
Yeah, I know it's true.
But he he could have passed for high school senior. But
maybe.
He definitely could have passed for high school senior.
Yeah. A pretty...
It's my job. He definitely could have.
Okay, fair.
I know kids that look like that. It's fine.
Yeah.
But he was not 14.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
That he was not.
Yeah.
But yeah, he
hulking, massive 14-year-old.
But it is like it's got so much like WB teen drama to it,
all over the face,
and that pretty much lasts the entirety of the show.
Yeah,
like aspects of that stay. Mm-hmm. It gets toned down a lot,
even when it transferred to the CW, when it became the CW,
when by season 10.
Well, that was their product. It's still
WB,
in a lot of ways is their product.
Yeah, WB had a definite look, feel, and style to their shows, whether it's Gilmore Girls or Everwood or anything. Like no matter any of those shows, they had a sort of look, feel, and style to them.
Yeah,
and Smallville was another one of those shows that kind of fit that formula, and it took this idea of let's do the teen drama thing, the high school thing, but let's add a superhero into it, and it wasn't anything. Buffy was already doing that essentially, and they took a lot of cues from Buffy, and they admit that. But yeah, it took that and put it on the CW or on the WB to start, and they did some fun stuff and some cheesy stuff and some bad stuff, but all throughout it was this, to me, really good Superman growing up story, coming of age story that I really, really love and really identify with.
Yeah.
Now, you have an interesting relationship with the show.
Yeah, I do. So I dated it for a while.
It's complicated.
And we were together for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And then I just got sick of its shenanigans, you know, and we weren't driving together, and I wasn't as interested, and maybe it wasn't as interested in me. I don't know. So we fell away from one another for a while. And then, but you still continued to be friends with Smallville, I did. Know, at the time. And so we kind of, like you and our other friend Andrew had kind of encouraged me to get back on the horse.
Yeah.
2 years later, and things were different. I was a bit different, and it was different,
You'd been seeing other people. It was,
right. Yeah. I'd been seeing other shows, people on other shows. and when I came back because it had changed the way that it was delivering, who it was. And so then I really stuck with it until, and I enjoyed my time with it tremendously until the end of its run when it died, at the age of 10. So that was fun. Yeah. I didn't think I could milk that way.
You made it last.
I didn't think I could make that. But looking back on it now, I haven't watched it in so long. I'm like, did I like Smallville? Or did I just like it because it was the only thing that we had? Because that was it. That was your only choice, really. If you wanted a television show, a comic book television show that wasn't a cartoon, and you didn't want a movie or anything like that, because 2001 we hadn't even gotten Spider-Man yet.
Right,
we just
had, was a year away.
At my age, really, we had Blade and X-Men.
Yeah, that's it. Pretty much.
I mean, and so
unless you count the '90s Batman films or the '80s Superman films,
right? Yeah.
It's been a while since you had anything good
in the new dawning age. Yeah. There really wasn't anything. It was just Smallville, and it had a slow burn. It had a really, really slow burn, and so So looking back in my memory, I'm like, that maybe I don't remember. Actually looked up a picture of Metallo yesterday.
Oh yeah,
because he was on season 9.
Yeah, 9,
and because I'm going back, and I don't remember if I said this on the podcast or not. I'm going back and watching Lois and Clark,
right?
Which is really super fun.
Oh my god!
Go back and
we can talk about that too. I love that show.
To go back and watch the ridiculousness that was Lois and Clark.
Oh yeah,
really enjoying it. But I remember there was Metallo on Lois and Clark,
right?
And I was like, oh, Metallo's on Smallville. What did he look like? And I pulled him up, and I was like, wow, that looks really cool. Like, it wasn't Metallo in the strictest sense that like he was all metal body or this or whatever, but he looked really cool and kind of gross looking and all this different stuff. And I'm like, maybe I did really like Smallville. And so now I'm just confused. And so here we are today, just like sitting here talking about it.
See, I have no confusion about the fact that I do love Smallville.
Oh, I'm aware.
You're aware of that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Nary a couple days goes by when you don't drop something Smallville.
I do make a lot of references to it. Yeah. It is the show that I've watched more than any other.
Yeah.
I have rewatched the entire series, a handful of times, and I'm on another rewatch now.
Yeah.
Kind of on just a slow burn whenever I have time.
Right.
Rewatch. So like I love the show for all its faults. I fully see the faults. Mm-hmm. I know that there are problems, major problems with it. There are things that are just plain lame and bad and just not good. And there are some things. You brought up this idea that maybe we all liked it so much, maybe you liked it so much because it was the superhero show we had at the time. And there are some things where it's like, yeah, that's been done better since then. We liked that. We were excited about that version of the Justice League because that was the best thing we had.
Right.
Season
6.
Mm-hmm. But 6/12 Justice. But we didn't. We've had better incarnations since then. But so yes, there are some things where that's the case. But there are other things where I just like the show because it has good. It's got good heart. It's got good storytelling. It's showing. There are times where it's just showing cool villains. It's showing cool early versions of like, oh, this is this villain's origin story in this,
right?
Telling of the story.
It's not dissimilar to Gotham that way.
Mm-hmm.
When I sit there and I mean, it's certainly a much younger version of the character. Actually, it's maybe more an appropriate age for what Clark was supposed to be.
Yeah,
at that age. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
And the interesting about the concept for Gotham is that Smallville was originally conceived as a Batman show. And they wanted to have it be on, and
Detective Bruce,
and they pitched
Bruce
it to
Wayne.
Fox.
Yep,
and Fox said no, and then I think it was Warner. Oh no, I believe it was Warner. They wanted to do a Batman show. Warner Brothers said no. We're we're considering developing another Batman movie, so you
Right.
can't have Batman for TV. So they pitched the Superman show to Fox, and Fox said no. And then they brought it to WB, and WB said, like, yeah, we'll take it. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Teen drama.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds
Yeah.
good. Giant spider. Good.
Mhm.
Got it.
Yeah.
Go. Yeah.
What was it? Worst killer in the animal kingdom, or,
Right,
or
yeah.
most vicious
killer in the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
But he was No Tights, No Flights.
It was No Tights, No Flights.
Which is the John
Yeah.
Peters thing.
That's true. That is true.
No Tights, No Flights.
But because it was the pitch was Superman in high school.
Right.
That was how Tom Welling was pitched, was Superman in high school.
And that's exactly what it is.
And that is exactly what it is.
It's an excellent pitch.
But when you don't hear the No Tights, No Flights and stuff, when you just hear Superman in high school,
you think
you
Superboy.
literally think Superboy.
Yeah.
You think a teenage Superman flying around his high school.
So you think Superboy, The Adventures of Superboy, the other TV
the
show.
80s TV series, right?
Yeah.
So he was not into that, Tom Welling, when he was first told, but they explained, no, this is what we want to do. We want it to be different. We want it to be a little more, for the time, more realistic,
Right.
you know, and realistic it was. It fits in with the other teen dramas of the time that were not superhero shows.
Right.
You know, it fits in with the Gilmore Girls and things like that. One Tree Hill.
He was just strong at first, right? Or was he fast right away?
No, he was pretty fast too. But we met him at, yes, he was fast because he was running to school every day.
Right.
But
that's right.
But we met him at a time when he only had the strength and the speed, and he was starting to discover the other powers.
Right, and that was part of the fun of the show.
Yeah.
Like, you know, one day the substitute teacher comes in and he's got
heat vision.
or
X-Ray was just a couple episodes into the first season.
right,
like,
yeah. And so, but I mean, it took a long time to get up to some of the other powers, and Flight wasn't. I mean, there were hints of it and other different things, but it really wasn't until the finale that he really flew.
Yeah, right. That's very true. Yes, and that's something that that's one of the downsides is that they thought this was going to be a 5-year show.
Right.
They were planning for it from the pilot. There was a line in there where Jonathan asks Clark, you know, are you doing okay? And Clark says, ask me in about 5 years. Oh. So they had this idea that, you know, we'd like to get about a 5-year run out of this.
Right.
You know, they didn't know if they get picked up or whatever, but they were hoping about 5 years. And 5 years down the line,
it was the most popular show on
the network. Yeah. It was crushing it. So they knew every year they were uncertain. This could be the last season. This could be the last season. For pretty much the last 5-6 years of the show.
Right.
Every year was like, well, we get one more. Okay, cool. And every year was one more add-on. So you never knew if this was going to be the final season. So they were always tying things up. Every season had to be this huge finale that was going to culminate in a major event that might or might not be the series finale.
Right.
And it had to be something that could make it the series finale. So you had a couple of times, and it gets frustrating to watch it, especially if you're binging it, where it's like, and they bring you to the edge, and then they come back, and they tease you, bring you to the edge again, and they bring it back. So you always think, like, he's a Superman, he's doing Superman-ish things, and then the whole next season, he
regresses.
comes off that.
You know, and I think that's what knocked me off of the show.
It might be. The pace can be a little yo-yo.
Yeah, it was yo-yo. And,
Yeah.
and there was also... I mean, a lot of television was certainly like this at the time. It was the Ross and Rachel, will they, won't they, let's drag this out. Oh, there's a problem with this and this.
Yeah.
And so the him and Lana thing, and being a comic book fan, knowing that he's not going to end up with Lana, it almost feels tedious.
Especially with Lois in the show.
Yes, but when she arrived, it became a very tedious exercise because
when you get it together,
right?
Come on.
Lois is right there. Like, I don't need them to be together necessarily, but if Lana's just if they're dragging that cord, you know, it just.
I know what you mean. There are definitely things like that are very frustrating. But when you, I mean, and this is like a kind of, you know, it's definitely a defense of the show, but you need to. Once you know that makes it make more sense. Like, okay, so they didn't really know how they were going to make this last another year, so they had him. Like, if it wouldn't have been as frustrating if he wasn't always getting so close to be like, he built the Fortress of Solitude and then he didn't go back there for like 20 episodes. You know, like if they weren't doing things like that, if it was more of a natural progression of like a straight line instead of like these ups and downs.
Well, it's because they eventually had to make all of this last for 10 years without him being Superman,
right?
And what's interesting is that they did get there were certainly they built up to it. You know, first he's the the blur,
the red blue blur,
because he's just running around in his red jacket with his blue shirt, or vice versa. And then he has the black coat, and then he has the leather jacket. And, and it builds to this other hero, but on shows that have learned from Smallville, shows like Arrow, Flash, Legends, Supergirl, all these different shows that are on television, if you start with the hero, you can go wherever you want.
It's true.
Even Arrow took 4 years to get him to call him Green Arrow, but he was still in a costume.
He was still in the costume
during that time.
From the start. The thing I think about that is that I think that studios had this idea.
Yes.
I think we've talked about this.
Yes.
They had this idea that people weren't ready to see the real costumes.
Costumes on television will be silly.
I don't know.
Blah, blah, blah.
It's hard to do. They look cheesy. They look silly. All this spandex and armor and things like that. Like, it looks silly. People had this idea that audiences weren't ready for that. But then every time you showed them, like, Superman in the 80s, no one thought that, like, the costume didn't look good. Michael Keaton and Val Kilmer and those guys looked fine. It was
George
only
Clooney looked silly because he had nipples.
He had
on
nipples.
His suit, but
That was
it had
stupid.
nothing to do with wearing the bat suit.
Right. I think that movie messed up so much about superhero TV and movies for a decade.
It destroyed everything for about a decade.
It set everything back a decade because you go to the mid 2000s.
Yeah, right. But because even like the X-Men movies, they're just wearing leather bodysuits. They're not in costumes.
Right.
Spider-Man gets a pass.
Spider-Man gets a pass because you can't have Spider-Man not be in a Spider-Man costume. But I think that is things like Spider-Man are what helped to reset.
That's right. Because nobody walked in the theaters like, why is he wearing that silly costume?
He should be wearing a T-shirt that says "I'm a spider."
Right? Exactly. Like nobody cares. Like you go expecting colorful costumes. You don't go to the circus. You don't go to Cirque du Soleil going, why aren't they wearing jeans?
Right. You don't go to a magic show and then ask like, why did the rabbit disappear? You want to see what you came for.
Right.
Yeah,
that's an excellent analogy.
Like, when you go to see a superhero movie or watch a superhero show, you want to see superheroes. But this was at a time when the conventional wisdom was that people weren't ready to see that.
Right.
So no flights, no tights was in effect because they thought people weren't ready to see it. By the end of the show, by the
flights
middle
are
of the
also
show,
expensive thing, particularly in 2001. So I certainly understand their flights.
I do. But that was part of that was the rationale for that. And because of Smallville, we can have that made it obvious to the studio execs that a show like Arrow can work, and then because of that, Flash, and because of that, Supergirl, and so on.
Because Arrow's always had his costume.
He's always had his costume, and the Flash had it from the first episode. He was the Flash from the pilot,
right? But even on Smallville, just like staying in the Smallville world, Hawkman, Dr. Fate, Stargirl,
all season 8 and later.
Right, exactly. But the show built to that. But it took characters in costume and went, here you go. Here they are in a costume, and nobody was like, well, that's silly.
Dr. Fate's helmet is too shiny.
Right, exactly. And now, comic fans could have looked at maybe Hawkman and gone, his helmet's kind of wobbly.
It's not quite right. Yeah,
it's not quite right, or this or that. But that's not saying they look silly being in costume. Right. It's more like your costume design is interesting.
Yeah. Exactly. And they build, they start with just having him like subtle things like, ooh, he's always going to wear a blue T-shirt and a red jacket, or a red T-shirt and a blue jacket.
Hundreds and hundreds of those jackets were purchased.
Oh, they were and destroyed. In all the fight scenes and stuff. But so they started like just subtle like, oh, it's kind of like a cape and the uniform.
Right.
And then it became like, oh, okay, we're going to have like the Green Arrow, but he's like, he like wears like a green hood, and like it's very close to like the actual Green Arrow costume.
But he did really wear green pants and a green hood.
Like a green leather, like
he had sunglasses instead of a mask. That was their big...
Right, but they had Impulse was just wearing like a red hoodie,
and Cyborg wore a hoodie, and
Cyborg wore a hoodie, but he was a cyborg, and Aquaman was really wearing a hoodie on the inside, but you know what I mean,
budgets.
like exactly. But he did have robotic.
But he had robotic parts, did that one X-ray scene,
right? So exactly. So, but they built up to like mid series, pretty much season 6, right?
Yeah,
season 6, 10 years after Batman and Robin, right. That's when we're like, all right, maybe we can try.
That's 2005, 2006. So now you've already gotten 2 Spider-Man movies.
2007 actually, but
3 Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? The culture was already shifting.
Yeah, we've shifted in a different direction.
And where was X-Men at that point? I'm trying to remember.
That would have been 3 X-Men movies in.
So
a Hulk movie.
Iron Man was on the horizon.
Batman Begins has already
been out.
Taken place as 2005.
Right. So you're starting to get this superhero machine is already.
Iron Man and Dark Knight are on the horizon.
They're about to come.
Yeah.
So we're the superhero.
Fantastic Four has already come.
Oh yeah, the first two.
Daredevil.
Daredevil. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
Daredevil's not the best example.
Ghost Rider, but he wore a costume.
But he wore full costume. So
he was the only one that wore a costume.
That's true.
But he wore a
That's
costume.
true.
Yeah.
The point is, we've seen at that point lots of comic book properties on the big screen and the small screen, and most on the big screen, and it's showing like, oh, okay, we can have them being costume, and like people don't reject that. That's not
right.
That's not the thing about Daredevil they didn't like. It wasn't the costume.
I know a lot of people didn't like the costume,
but
I'm not. But
you get what I'm saying.
Yes,
that wasn't the main problem with the movie. Maybe it's a thing people don't like, but it wasn't the main problem with the movie. So now we start delving into the. All right, maybe the other characters can start to wear their real costumes more and more, and we can have, Black Canary be there and be sort of where her mask is like her mask is like makeup, but it's still
mask.
But whatever.
Paint mask, yeah.
She eventually did get the real mask, so it was cool.
Yes, she did.
So
she was pregnant for some of that, wasn't she?
Yeah,
I vaguely remember that because sometimes she just it would show up on like a teleconference.
Yes, exactly.
Just
her face.
Head. Yeah.
So they did a few things like that too. But yeah, they had
all those characters.
They basically had the Justice League. They had a good chunk of the Justice League.
They were missing Batman. They were missing
Wonder Woman.
They were basically missing Batman and Wonder Woman and Green Lantern.
But
a lot of times when you think Justice League, you think the Trinity, and then you can kind of mix and match from there.
Right. Right. So they had a good chunk of them there.
But classic Justice League lineup. Well, technically speaking, if you're looking at the classic lineup, they really only just had Aquaman. Because they had
Green Arrow, they had Martian Manhunter here and there. That, you know what I mean?
They
had
I
know what you're saying. I do. Yeah. The Magnificent
original.
Seven.
Right. Yeah, but you're right. Martian Manhunter. And they had a Flash. It wasn't maybe the Flash. It was probably the
lesser Flash,
the lesser of them. But it's fine, whatever. Because they also had Flash movie plans down, way down that.
That's why they only gave him Impulse.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But then they had Green Arrow, even though they were planning Supermax at the time.
Right,
so.
and the show was about Superman, and they did Superman Returns,
right?
And so it's just
right.
Whatever.
But with Superman Returns, they tried to sort of interface the show with the movie a little bit, where the Daily Planet were both Art Deco-y buildings.
Yes, that's
looked,
right.
Reasonably similar. The farm
of it, yeah.
That's right. The farm in Superman Returns looked very remarkably like the farm in Smallville.
Oh, yeah, that Smallville farm.
Beautiful.
Now, see, here's it's funny because they say oh yeah, I'm not down on the show per se, but there are things about the show that I think to myself this is still John Schneider will forever be my Pa Kent.
Forever.
He is the best.
Forever.
And I've seen a bunch of different Pa Kents and some that I've really liked. I love Papa Kent from Lois and Clark.
Oh yeah.
And and from the original Superman,
Glenn Ford,
and even Kevin Costner, for as people being he's not the good one
but
because he's still good. He
clearly
loves his son and all this different stuff. And
listen, I mean, when I found out that Ray Kinsella from Field of Dreams was going to be Pa Kent, I was like, that's so perfect.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, he brought so many things that are perfect. But I still think John Schneider was the full package.
Yeah, he was the full package. But you also get a whole television show to,
he played that character longer than anyone else has ever played.
Right, exactly. And probably longer than anybody probably will ever play again.
Probably.
At least for the next couple of decades.
Yeah.
Until they reboot Smallville or something like that.
Right.
And whatever. So it's things like that, and there are things even that I just watched Man of Steel not too long ago in preparation, and for Batman v Superman, and there's they're at the what's Chloe's last name there?
Chloe Sullivan.
But yeah, it's they're at Sullivan Garage at one point in Smallville, and the
Whitney Fordham,
the Fordham child, and also the Fordham child.
Yeah.
Those are all Smallville things, kind of in there.
Yeah.
So it's still in the culture.
Yeah, it's in the fabric of the franchise,
right?
Now.
Exactly, and some things are I can't really speak for the New 52, but I mean even Lex and Lex and Clark knowing each other in Smallville and growing up together. That's like comics in Smallville. They're all interwoven together. That's from the comics first before Smallville, but
having them be like best friends like that was
I know. Right, or even that Vancouver mansion. That's the X mansion.
Yes.
It's the Queen mansion in Arrow.
That's right.
It was the Luthor mansion for a long, long time for people.
Yeah, I had forgotten. It's been a while since I've watched any X-Men movies, so I'd forgotten about it. And then
when
you saw
Deadpool, you were like, oh my god,
those are like even some of the same shots. The Ivy looks the same. Oh my god,
it's the mansion they use for all the stuff and
for all the things.
And you shoot in Vancouver and you need a mansion. That's the one you're going to use.
Exactly.
Yeah, who cares? Best thing to come out of that show for me, though, all the things that it did for superheroes on television today,
sure,
and all that stuff is John Glover.
Oh man,
John Glover is the best thing to come out of that show.
So good. He's such a phenomenal actor.
Yep.
I thought I was so happy we got to see him in not Death of a Salesman, in Waiting for Godot.
Yeah.
Oh man,
that was tremendous.
That was a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was absolutely, he elevated that show. I think he and John Schneider and Annette Bening,
O'Toole.
were and what?
Annette O'Toole.
What did I say? Annette Bening? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I meant Annette O'Toole. Those three took the show and stepped it up a notch. But I think really John Glover was the thing that they really needed in the show.
Yes.
To give it more veritas. No, just kidding. Give it more. That was
gravitas.
That was also a deep.
Right?
Yeah,
that's deep.
Yeah.
I'm right to that part of the series right now.
What? Oh, is that where you are?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the show definitely had its misstep seasons too, as all shows do generally. But I mean, like, it just when I think of Smallville, I think it drags. We already talked about this.
Okay,
and I think that's the thing that I'm like, ugh, you're just so draggy.
Yeah,
you're like trying to get, but I think because the ultimate goal is this, and so for whatever reason, I just don't want to enjoy the ride. I just want to get to this,
to the end result.
Yeah, I keep gesturing even though nobody can see this.
Well, that's a common criticism where people say that a lot of superhero movies, even today, spend too much time on the origin story. And this is 10 years of origin story.
It's 10 years of origin story. And some people love origin stories. Yeah. I like origin stories, but when I know it, I don't necessarily want to spend 10 years in it.
I get that.
Which is why I think I have a stronger affinity for the later seasons, too, because it's less origin story because they're actually actively doing something that's super heroic as opposed to, I'm going to the torch to write on my 2002 Mac. You know what I mean?
See, but I think what I enjoy the earlier seasons a bit more, I think because they are more evenly paced.
Right.
And more like they build on each other more rather than sort of like doing the yo-yo effect.
Yeah.
And so if you like the later season,
yo-yo effect.
He came in season 8. If you like the later seasons, you're probably getting more frustrated because you're watching the ones that are more unevenly paced.
God, I haven't watched it in years, so I'm not watching it.
Okay, I know that's true.
But yeah, that's also true.
But those are the ones that you tend towards.
Yeah.
So whenever you did watch them or have watched them, you were watching the ones that were more unevenly paced. So you're remembering.
That's true. But I also tire of Freak of the Week.
Okay,
style
that's a fair
quickly.
Yes.
Freak of the Weeks grind on me very quickly.
Okay.
And so, though I will always remember the Amy Adams episode fondly.
I know.
From season 1.
It's so funny that she was.
Yeah.
Season 1, yeah.
Yeah.
It is so funny that she was, she was Jodie in that episode, and now she's Lois Lane.
Yeah, that's fun. So the show has done so much for television, and people don't look fondly on it.
Yeah, people ridicule it a lot, which is too bad.
But I mean, people also
fine.
ridicule Buffy, and like that did a lot for genre.
Yeah, but they don't ridicule Buffy as much because it was the first.
Maybe that's
of its kind, really.
Yeah.
And people just sort of like say, "Oh, that was like that was." They really, you have, I think, the most common point of view. It's like, "Oh, that was a superhero show that was hard to watch." Like they all watched it back then and they loved it then, but now looking back, they're like, "That was really hard to watch."
Yeah, but because I think you've seen a real superhero show versus the origin superhero show, and those are two different. Those are just two different things.
Different. That's true.
Yeah, and so it's almost unfair to even compare them in its own way because it's not trying to be a superhero show; it's an origin story,
right?
And so it would be like watching the pilot of The Flash for 10 years every week, or something like that.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very, very true, and that's a very fair assessment, I think. But I just think of it as like, look, it was a different time, and this is what people were willing to make and willing to watch, and I really enjoyed it for that. I get a lot of nostalgia watching the show, especially the early seasons when I hear like the Coldplay and like the pop music that they choose. I'm sort of like, oh wow, this takes me back to when I was in high school, or this. Even though I wasn't exactly the same age as Clark and Friends, I was a couple years younger.
Yeah, but it was still
close enough. Yeah, I was in high school for at the same time and stuff. So I've
been a freshman his junior year.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. So So I remember a lot of that stuff and the music and just what it felt like to be a teenager at that time. It evokes that for me. And then the later seasons of Smallville was when I was in college. That was when I made a lot of friendships that I still have today, and that's when I like got into podcasting. It's when I got into Twitter and all these things that are like part of my adult life still. So it's like my origin story.
So you owe Smallville.
I owe Smallville
part of your life.
In a way, I owe Smallville for the fact that we're doing this right now.
Right.
I mean, I was already doing my own podcast, but I wasn't doing much with it. And then I discovered this whole like phenomenon of TV podcasts, because of Smallville. And then I discovered Twitter from that podcast, and then I discovered, countless things from there. So yeah, a lot of like my job, which led to my fiance, like all these things, I found
to Smallville.
I got into Twitter, which got me into what I do for a living, which is where I met my fiance. So like these weird, count the degree of separation kind of goes back to Smallville in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that is crazy that you invented Twitter. I always forget.
I did invent Twitter. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well,
just call me Jack Dorsey.
Yeah.
So where can people find us on the internet?
They can find us at Beer with Geeks at the following places: Twitter, Facebook, Gmail, Satchel Media Player,
iTunes,
Overcast, iTunes. Leave us reviews, a star, send an email.
We love
send
stars.
Some love. So we love stars, past and present. Basically, the present if you go into space, past if you look at them from the Earth.
That's right.
Yep.
Light years.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. So anyway, this was a good chat about Smallville. But until next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Always hold on to Smallville.